This evening, we have another keynote address from Dr. Rattan Lal, Professor Lal. He's one of our esteemed and internationally renowned soil scientists, expert in carbon sequestration. Professor Lal, if I started reading his biography, dinner would be at about 8:45 or 9 o'clock. So I'm not going to read through the entire thing, but he does fantastic work that he's going to share with you that really is about solving some of the biggest challenges we're facing in society today. Dr. Lal has been recognized with awards that, again, are way too numerous to start listing, but just to give you an idea of the kind of level, the Japan Prize, the World Food Prize, it was part of the Nobel IPCC Prize as well. So he's a very accomplished scientist, and I'm going to stop my introduction because there was a group of students at Penn State who did a really nice job of introduction and something that I could not possibly do. So we'll let them go ahead and share their introduction, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Lal. Yes, I am. Thank you.
As well as evaluations and research of our program. Additionally, as a PhD student, I want to share about our team, which is a committed dancing that showcases here a folk dance from this region of Punjab. This folk dance originates from Punjabi agriculture and farming practices.
Our next speaker is Dr. Rattan Lal, a Punjabi and the 2020 World Food Prize laureate, whose research helped 500 million smallholder farms. His research entails positive impacts on agricultural yields, natural resource conservation, and climate change mitigation through a soil-centric approach. With his background being raised on a Punjabi farm, he understood the importance of caring for one's land and soil quality to ensure crop yields.
To celebrate agricultural success across Punjab, there would often be festivals like Lodi and Vaisakhi. Lodi is a festival that celebrates the harvest season to come and is on January 13th. Lodi is also performed at Vaisakhi, which is the celebration of crops growing and their first harvest, which occurs in mid-April.
Robert uses crops as part of the folk dance. All of these crops historically have practical use in Punjabi agriculture.
The first crop is a sop. A sop is typically a wooden platter. When it is closed hard, it makes a loud sound resembling thunder. Farmers used it back in the day to scare away any crows or field rodents that were eating the crops.
Another crop we use is called the kunda. Originally, the kunda is a 5 feet long wooden stick with a hook at the end of it like a cake. Nowadays, both ends contain a colored flag or a tag. Historically, the kunda had two uses. It was used as a cave walking stick. Farmers would spend long hours walking in park all day. It was also used to whack down crops on the kunda. Additionally, there were dance moves related to the celebration of agriculture. For example, the Boston. The Boston lines were dancers raise their hands and sway them side to side, resembling the swaying of the crops.
We hope you enjoy the short performance we put together to recognize the agricultural references in the dance. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hovi duniya nu gote lagavaundi honiya Kaliyan te mehndi na mor paundi honiya Meri chal ke jal jani yaar re bolya pyar da hua dal sun lagdiya hai mainu asure suha dal sun lagdiya hai mainu
Thank you. That was the first part of the program. Casey said you're going to do few steps like that, no?
I think so. Yeah, you can see where you are.
Let's see if it works.
You're saying I can do a few steps.
I can't move. Sharon, slide is not moving forward. So. Okay, so use all right, thank you again. It is the second time that I have the honor to be invited by Casey. And I thought I'll begin with soil. And let the soil explain what it is. Hello there, folks. Do you know who or what I am? I am the geomembrane of the earth. I am your protective shield, your buffer, your mediator of energy, water, and biogeochemical compounds. I am your sustainer of productive life, your ultimate sources of elements, and the habitat for most biota. I am the foundation that supports you, the cradle of your myths, and the dust from which you will return. I am the sun. Don't you dare not. If you don't believe me, go and visit the sites of the once mightiest Mesopotamia, Indus Valley people, the Mayan, the Incan, the Aztec, and many more. They treated me like dirt, and I made them dirt and a part of me forever. I shall never forget. Yes, soil is alive. It's not just dirt, mineral matter. Soil is mineral matter 95% plus living organism, and the remains 5%. At different stages of decomposition, the total amount about 5 metric tons per hectare of living organism in a healthy soil. And the presence of organic matter, both live and detritus, which imparts and moderates the life support processes. The soil and life are essentially dependent upon one another. There can be no life without soil, no life without soil. Remember that statement. And no soil without life. They have evolved together. The rhizosphere, that the soil root interface at nanoscale, is the only site proven in the universe where the death is resurrected into life. There's no other place. And the soil has 2 types of carbon. The dark horizon, organic, humus, and the lighter material, which is carbonates, inorganic carbon. So soil has 2 types of carbon, organic and inorganic. Inorganic carbon sometimes looks like this in dry climates. It's a nodule or a film of water. And these are secondary carbonates. They're also called pedogenic carbonates. These are formed in soil, and their life can be several thousands of years. So there are 2 ways of carbon sequestration: organic, which is human, and inorganic, which is pathogenic carbonates that I just showed you. The global soil carbon pool is really very large amount depending on the depth of the organic carbon, SOC and SIC, to 30 centimeter depth globally, about 940 gigatons. To 1 meter depth, 2,227 gigatons. To 2 meter depth, 5,000 gigatons. And if you take permafrost in it, it really is 6,000 gigatons to 3 meter depth. Atmosphere contains 820. Plus the forest, all the vegetation you see contains 620. So 620 versus 6,880. So soil is really the largest reservoir of the soil organic matter. The dark material that I showed you, it is the basis of all the ecosystem services, such as water resources, quality and quantity, climate change, mitigation, adaptation, stabilization, the food, nutrition, quality and amount, and biodiversity, above ground and below ground. They all come from there. Indeed, soil organic matter is the heart of soil. This heart of soil has been exploited by humanity since about 10,000 years ago, when the agriculture began. It's exploited for nutrients it contains, the harvested for produce that we take out of it, and the plow, which was called herd, primitive tools, was invented about 10,000 years ago to facilitate the harnessing of the riches in the organic matter content to grow crops and raise livestock. This you might recognize is the moldboard plow designed by, anybody guess? Moldboard. Who? Moldboard. Thomas Jefferson. 1784. And Thomas Jefferson got it patented by Charles Newford in 1796. And he met somebody, blacksmith in 1813 named John Deere, who produced it, multiplied it, and this plow won the best. 2 horses and a mule and a plowman. Until this situation happened in 1934. The grapes of that. Ohio State, I'm glad they're an extension building, an extension scientist, wrote a book in 1945 called Plowman's Folly. At that time, nobody could imagine that you could plant crops without plowing. Therefore, there was another book that came out, The Furrow and Us. And this was the biggest debate ever in Time magazine at that time. And you probably guessed right who won the debate. The furrow and us. There were no herbicide, there were no fertilizers yet, and plow facilitated those things. Therefore, at that time, the furrow and us was one. Carbon stock in the atmosphere, and before agriculture began, was 360 gigatons. At the time of Industrial Revolution, 560 gigatons. This 200 gigatons came primarily from agricultural development of land throughout the world. And then now it's 880 gigatons. And this difference has come from 2 sources: emission from land use, conversion, and agriculture, which is about 575 gigatons total. Total from fossil emission thus far is about 450 gigatons. Soils have lost 130. We cannot put back the fossil fuel very easily, although people are trying to do that by geologic injection in mild deep. But certainly land use conversion, 575 gigatons, soil and vegetation, we have to, if we want to mitigate global warming and keep planetary pressures going. Some other sources of greenhouse gases that you never think of: food waste. 1/3 of all food produced globally is wasted. Estimated in the United States is 40%. And per capita CO2 emission from food waste in North America is 860 kilograms of CO2 per person per year. Industrialized Asia about 800, Europe about 700, Latin America 550, Southeast Asia about 350, Sub-Saharan Africa 210. It's a major source, it's a double jeopardy. Food waste is a crime, there's no other word, against humanity and nature, both. You never think about this being a source of carbon dioxide. This picture from God's own farm country. You know which state is that? Iowa. Globally, we have 5.7 gigaton of carbon transported by erosion every year. And out of that 5.7, 1.1 is emitted into the atmosphere. Now, sedimentologists, they check what goes into the ocean. And we get 0.6 gigaton into the ocean, and they call it, aha, that's sequestration. They forgot what happens before it gets to the ocean. Global hunger before COVID was 690 million. At present, because of the COVID, 811 million. And the number is increased. Malnourishment affects 2 billion people. We have mega cities. Mega city is a city of 10 million people. 10 million people, number of cities was 3 in 75, 10 in 90, 16 in 2000, 28 in 2014, presently about 31, a couple of years 37, 41, 2030, in 2050 there will be 50, and by 2100 there will be 83 mega cities in the world with people more than 10 million. A city of 10 million requires 6,000 tons of food per day. If it is 30 million, multiplied by 3. There are some cities which are already 40 million. Therefore, some of the food consumed in the city must be grown within the city limits by recycling the nutrients and water. Planning city does not mean roads and airports and bus stops and other. It also means where the food is going to come from. That means urban agriculture. Another part which is very, very critical, soil health. You heard what soil, its own definition was. Health of soil, plants, animal, human, environment, and the planet is one and indivisible. And the health of soil goes down, everything else goes down with it. And it was John Muir, one of the philosophers, who said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And that's exactly what it is. I'm very disappointed to state that we proposed a class to teach this 2 years ago. There were 10 professors from epidemiology, from plant science, from animal veterinary science, from public health, from medical, but it did not fit our curriculum. It has to, it must. Sustainability, that's the discussion you have. What is it? A state in which demands placed on the environment can be met without reducing its capacity to allow all people to live well now and in the future. And there are 4 pillars of sustainability: environmental, economic, social, institutional. And the sustainability is really integration of balancing of the environmental, social, institutional, and economic issues. And sustainable development is making people better off in an ethically sound way. And I would like to say that sustainability must also consider life other than human, which are about 8.4 million. Very large number. Environmental sustainability, several issues which we deal with, both climate and water quality. Adopting innovations. Innovation means technology, organization, processes, management, and of course the governance. Governance is the main thing. We have many people go to the COP20, which is the UN Climate Summit, and they make slogans, and when you come back, oh wow, no, my constituency does not like it. And that's governance, which is very critical from the environmental sustainability point. I want to talk briefly about the 21st century green revolution as a core concept. I think in future, rather than input based. Input means variety, short stature, they are more responsive to input, they don't lodge with fertilizer and irrigation. The green revolution now must be soil based, soil resilience, ecosystem based, eco efficiency, knowledge based, science and management. And that's what brings us to the regenerative agriculture. What is it? It's not a practice, it's a philosophy, it's a concept, it's an idea, it's an approach. It's an approach which is inspired by eco-innovation, it's powered by non-carbon energy, it's driven by a circular economy and green infrastructure, and it's supported by the decarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere. Remember that 600 gigaton that carbon we have lost as the bedrock of sustainable development. We have to put it back. And that brings transformative strategies. What can transform the current system, which are characterized by 5 Ds: deplete, degrade, destroy, discard, dominate, and take from nature. We have to replace these Ds by R. 5R: reduce, reuse, recycle, regenerate, restore, and return land back to nature. Now come back to that how much we can. We have to. The land we have taken from nature for agriculture grown right now, 5 billion hectares, and we waste 40% of the food produced. It's not acceptable. How can we do that? By eco-intensification. I know we have a sustainable intensification there. It's eco-intensification. The aim is to optimize or sustain rather than maximize and produce food from less land, less water, less fertilizer and pesticide, less energy, and less emission of greenhouse gases, and with the aim to return the land back to nature. It is possible that by 2100, some of the agriculture will be soil-less agriculture. Not for urban agriculture, certainly, and that may have to happen. But whatever we do, the law of return has to be observed in agriculture. And what does the law of return say? The law states that substance we take from nature must be returned to the place from which we are taken. If not, you are degrading soil. How you replace it is a different story. As you put in organic, as you put it inorganic, it's logistic, but it must be replaced by creating a positive soil carbon budget. Soil is no different than a bank account. What you put into the bank account must be more than what you draw if you want your account to go up. And in case of soil, biochar, compost, cover crop, crop residue, many things, they must always exceed by losses from erosion, leaching, and decomposition. And that is what sequestration is. Unfortunately, in most places in the world, we have a situation where what we put in is not enough to take care of the losses that we have. People talk about fertilizer use, NPK. I think it's a time to change that slogan. The slogan should be CNPK. C comes before NPK. If your C content is about 2% in the root zone, the need for NPK will progressively decrease. And when people talk about water quality, by the time water has reached the stream and the lake, it's too late. Water must be stopped right on the land where it falls. And to do that, you have to have an adequate amount of C in it. So CNPK, not NPK. And if we have a cover crop, which are legumes, of course, tremendous amount. I'm rather concerned. This was my experiment in Nigeria, 1971. I was there from 69, and I started experiment of no-till farming in 70. These plots have already 2 crops. You can see corn and beans, and these beans are not soybeans, they're coffees. That was 50 some years ago, and no adoption. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. If we do agriculture properly, wetland restored, the carbon sequestration about 1,500 pounds per acre or kilogram per hectare. CRP, we had 40 million acres under that. Farm Bill 87 was the one the CRP started. About a ton per hectare, turf land, including golf courses. We manage them properly. Of course, we don't put as many chemicals. About a half a ton, no till about 300 to 400, 500 kilogram per hectare. Rangeland in dry climate, also 100 to 200 kilogram per hectare. But the interesting part is this total potential. On all soils of the world, if we manage them properly, we can put in about 2.5 gigaton of carbon dioxide. Organic. Inorganic is separate. And we do not have much estimate of that. Now, 2.5 is about 25% of the fossil fuel emission. Now, in addition to that, we estimated that between 2020 and 2100, total cumulative, what can we put back in soils of the world, is about 180 gigaton. In addition, some of the marginal land, if it's afforested, about 155 gigaton. Together, 333 gigaton. Drawdown of atmospheric CO2 157 parts per million. Therefore, if the fossil fuel can be replaced quickly and we decarbonize the terrestrial biosphere, global warming, keeping it below 2 degrees centigrade is still possible. And to do that, I think we have to adopt some act. And these acts sometimes scare people. Are you going to start punishing me? No, the act is to reward those who do good things, leave those who do not alone. And Soil Health Act is something which I'm hoping next Farm Bill will take part. We got Clean Air Act of 67 from EPA, Clean Water Act of 1972. How in the world is it ever possible to have clean air and clean water without having healthy soil? Environment is soil, water, air, biotic. We separate them because we got different departments. There is no other justification. Does soil have a right? You remember what I said in the beginning? I wasn't saying soil was selling that, right? Yes, soil must have right. Just as universal rights of human, rights of animal, there must also be rights of soil. And rights of nature, rights of river, rights of mountain, rights of forest. A living entity. Being the essence of all life, soil must have right to be protected, restored, thrived, and managed judiciously. Land managers who protect and enhance soil health must be rewarded. And how much reward, I'll come back to that in a moment, but it has to be done. Simply because you own the land does not mean you have a right to do whatever you want to do with it. Dump the chemicals in water and pesticides and pollutants as you wish. A handful of soil contains millions and millions of organisms, more biodiverse than the total biodiversity in the Amazon. And when you dump the chemical indiscriminately, you can hear them cry, stop. There is a book which I should have brought copy. It was published by IITA. And exactly the same dialogue between me, you will see me in a cartoon shape, talking to organisms, stop these people. I wish I had those powers. We need international soil policy, global soil resource commons, tragedy of the commons. There's an international soil policy vacuum. We have excellent, world class, there is nobody like them, 23 soil social scientists in my own department. It's a vacuum on this particular issue. Soil science must be connected with business leaders, policymakers, general public. There's a need for a multi-generational effort to enhance awareness about the importance of soil science and create an international soil policy. That our leaders, when they go to Cairo this year, last year Glasgow. 2 words are missing from the report: soil and agriculture. I hope it will not happen. Then there's a question of how much can you burn? And I teach in my class global carbon file. You take what was in the pre-industrial level, 280 parts per million, and say if you double it, then it's a tipping point, 560 parts per million. Today, if you Google, you'll find concentration 421 parts per million. So 560 minus 421, 2 gigaton takes 1 part per million, increasing the atmosphere, that's 278 gigaton. That's all we can burn before, what happened in London, under 4 degrees yesterday. So how do we divide this pie among nations? Among 8 billion people. If I were a Secretary General of the United Nations, I would really try to do something which is effective. So you got 278 gigaton and that's decreasing every day. How do you divide? Is it biofuel? Is it solar? Is it hydro? How do you incentivize people? How do you realize that we got to do something about it? Should farmers be rewarded for maintaining, protecting, increasing their soil carbon stock? I think yes. The soil organic carbon is the heart of soil health. Farmers must be rewarded for protecting soil life support process. The pay must be made for provisioning of multiple ecosystems, for carbon sequestration, water conservation, biodiversity, environment. How much? Societal value of that. Now the price dependent on demand and supply. When the supply is limited and demand, because we did not sign a cap, the Kyoto Treaty, and subsequently anybody can burn what you want. But the societal value, what does the human society get when you store carbon? That I published in 2013, $130 per ton. That means if a farmer sequesters half a ton, they got $65, $26 per acre per year. If they sequester 1/3 a ton, they got $43.78. I know there are some companies who are trying to sign contract and pay $6. That is what I call undervaluing a precious resource. You do not do that. Private sector can play a very, very critical role in translating science into action, promoting nature positive agriculture, increasing carbon access to inputs, and improving investment in agriculture research and teaching is very important. Casey mentioned we talked a few words about education, certainly very important. In addition to 3 R's, goal of the education has to be to prepare the next generation to address global issues. And what are the global issues? Food and nutrition. Nutrition. I mentioned 811 people hungry globally. 2 billion people are malnourished. And by the way, when we talk about hunger, we're not talking about faraway corner in some hidden part of the world. Actually, 40 million in the United States, 1.7 million in Ohio. Out of 1.7 million in Ohio, 500,000 are children. Even one child going to bed hungry is one too many. And we waste 40% of it. Environment, soil, water, air, global warming. Take personal responsibility. Each one of us 8 billion people is culprit and victim both. Some people say, what can I do? I'm just myself, but whatever little we do, if you can multiply by 8 billion, ethics. Everything we do is human-centric. It has to go beyond human-centric. We inhabit this planet with 8.4 million other parts of life. Integrity, respect. We must teach our children these right from the kindergarten. And that brings me to the question, how many alphabet Latin books are environment oriented? Have you seen one? We talk about it, but we never put it in practice. Connecting children with nature. Let them play in healthy soil. Let them feel the garden. Little Prince, translated into 350 languages. I'm hoping we should have something like Little Prince related to soil and environment. I've been talking to Jackie Wilkins. I hope it will happen. World right now is gripped by 3 C's. climate change. And 3 C's are really causing havoc. I cannot ever understand why policymakers come to the grip with the problems and make a decision. Hey guys, get to the table and discuss. I do not know why. The war must stop. It's a tragedy against humanity. There are already 10 million refugees, more than that. You know, we talk about refugees, but nobody talks about land. Can you imagine the land where those heavy machinery goes? And you think about the land where the heavy metals are being discarded by waste? Can you see the land which has the craters from the bombardment? Land restoration after ravaged by war takes generations. Both people and the land have to go through restoration. So somebody has to stop it. And I cannot believe it that nobody does it. That means I was listening to BBC this morning in the Horn of Africa. I've never seen any worse than that. Famines are man-made tragedies. That's a fact. Those 10 million refugees, which added to 35 million before, was famines. We must make famine and mass starvation politically intolerable, morally taxing, ethically unthinkable, and humanly unacceptable. And that is education. That is what we got to teach. We cannot take soils for granted. If soils are not restored, crops will fail even if rains do not. Hunger will perpetuate even with the emphasis on biotechnology and genetically modified crops. Civil strife and political instability will plague the developing world even with the sermons on human rights and democratic ideals. And humanity will suffer even with great scientific strides. Political stability and global peace are threatened. And we know that. We are going through that 3 C's because of soil degradation, food insecurity, and desperateness. When people are suffering, miserable, desperate, you know what they do? They pass that suffering to the land. And the land reciprocates. And this vicious cycle never stops. One way to stop the war anywhere in the world is think that this world is one family. And that the world is one family, the Sanskrit phrase is Vasudeva Kutumbakam. I was looking up last night, when was it written? For 2000 BC. In the Indus Valley, at Mahajatharapada. Soil stewardship and care must be embedded in every fruit and vegetable eaten, in each grain ground into the bread consumed, in every cup of water used, in every breath of air inhaled, in every scenic landscape. Thank you.
We can take a few minutes for questions. Yeah, thanks again for your presentation. I'm curious about the soil or the healthy soil policy that you presented as, like, this 3-stool with, the clean air, act, and clean water. Is there, are there legislators or anyone that you've been able to work with or begin to draft policy on, like, what that would look like and how that might manifest in the US?
As a teacher, I cannot reach legislation. I have been told that people. I can only talk in a setting like this. But I do know that last 2 years ago, Doing Soil Resolution Act was passed by Senate, and Senator Brown did talk to me about my suggestion. So that was a very good starting point. We had a workshop that Casey organized 3 years ago with our vice president.
Yeah.
Al Gore.
Actually, it was Tim.
And Al Gore talked about it. So I think if he talks about, and right now they are in power, so maybe something will happen. I'm hoping the next farm bill will be 324. I hope. But it really has to come from public, not from.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about like action or evidence or examples where we can actually build carbon on agricultural soils in particular. So I know at my institution, there's this long-term research experiment that's looked at a variety of cropping systems, conventional continuous corn, organic rotation, no-till, and grass, like graze or just. And what that has shown, at least in our specific context, is that all of them lose soil except, or lose carbon, I should say, except the grass, which holds on to carbon but doesn't really build, which is a little potentially discouraging if we're trying to build on working lands. So I'd love to hear more about.
We are sitting about quarter a mile away from experiment I set up in 89.
Yeah.
And I have mulch rate. Even weeds are not allowed to grow. I put known amount of carbon, and I plow and not plow some. So the rate of carbon sequestration of what you add into the soil in this climate is somewhere between 15 and 20%. That's what stays back. If you don't plow. If you plow, it doesn't stay.
Yeah.
We had experiments at Coshocton, which unfortunately got discontinued. We found that the average rate of carbon sequestration in no-till, with crop residue return and no plowing, was about 500 pounds per acre, 500 kilograms. When you grow a cover crop in the off season, the rate can go up to 700, 800 kilograms. When you graze it and have manure added into it, it goes about a ton per hectare. We have experiments at Worcester, at South Charleston, at Whiteville, which are set up in 1960. Their data on carbon sequestration on lot of plots is available, and those are the rates that are on this. Those reports are also available. I think somebody at Worcester, SAEA, I forgot his name, is a postdoc who replaced Steve Cullman.
Christine? Yeah.
They have collated all the publications and they are available online. Yeah.
One of the really striking statistics that she pulled up was the need for megacities to produce 10 to 20% of the consumed food within the city itself. And I was just wondering if you know what that would practically look like in the future, if there are other people who are currently doing that research and doing that planning of what that actually looks like what crops, where the land is going to be, how do we integrate that into urban planning?
Research never stops. You keep doing more and more, but translating what we know as of today into action is very important. In Ohio, where no-till started, by the way, David Van Doren and beloved triplet, I think you really know it's both of them. They started this research, the plots are named after them. But even in Ohio, only about 40% is under rotational no-till. 1 year no-till, the other year chisel till. It's not the same thing. So translating science into action requires some incentives. And that is what I was suggesting. If farmers are doing the right thing and they're sequestering carbon at a rate which our experiments have shown, reward them properly, not just a token money. I'm very pleased to say that we are going to start a national experiment on farm study. It involves 8 or 10 universities throughout the country. It's going to be announced probably this week. No, this week is over already. Maybe Monday or Tuesday. I have seen the videos prepared. It's a $50 million project. And private sector is involved. We are going to select farms throughout the country and monitor the carbon stock with a baseline for 5 years, next 5 years. We are extending this experiment with equal help to South and Central America. So I think 5 years from now, things are going to change. Internationally, there's a lot more awareness than we have here. So we think people like you is our hope. You stop another one more. Okay.
I heard you two emphasize the importance of governance and also kind of picking up on the last comment with the trend being the growth of mega cities, more of the population living in urban areas. It seems in Ohio here and many parts of the world, the separation between urban and rural has gotten wider. And in terms of governance, are you thinking in terms of strategies to reconnect urban and rural areas? For example, through new approaches to land tenure. For example, now, here in Ohio, you have a growing percentage of acres that's being owned by non-farmer landowners, and yet you see many new farmers having difficulty gaining access to land. So I'm interested in your thoughts about how to make that connection between people and the land work, in terms of new governance approaches.
In the interest of saving time, I took out a few slides this afternoon. One of the slides was one home, one garden. Every home should have a home garden. A small patch. I have one which is 20 feet by 20 feet. And I produce enough right now. I was counting yesterday. I have potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, zucchini, okra. I counted 12 of them. And it's more than plenty. But here was the problem. When I moved into this new place where I had a stable garden 3-4 years ago, I put on my pot to grow crop very first year, and I got a letter from the municipal committee. We have a complaint. I have kept that letter. What was the complaint? Your neighbor said there's a pile of dirt with a rotting straw on top of it. Pile of dirt. So I'm writing a book with exactly that title. Pile of dirt with rotting. And I asked the officer who said, if you don't call us by this and this date, we are going to come and do it. So I called. I said, have you sent anybody? She said she was there herself. What did you see? I saw some plants growing. What do they look like? Is it a vegetable garden? Yes. What do you do? I teach that, and I'm practicing at home. Is that crime? We have a culture where we think food has to come from grocery store. We have to change that.
I think you need to tell both the officer and the neighbor that quote that you started with. That was a good one. Well, I think Dr. Lal was being humble when he said, when you asked about, whether political leaders are listening to him. So thanks to my associate with Dr. Lal, I had dinner with the president of Iceland and breakfast with the vice president of the United States. So he is listening to white people all over the world. You are going to stay for dinner with us? Yes. So Dr. Lal will be here with us for dinner. You will find that he not only is he a brilliant scientist, he's a very warm and big-hearted person. So I would really encourage you to get around and spend a little bit of time with Dr. Lal. Let's give him another hand. I want to point out there was an awful lot of consistency that we're building between what you heard this morning from David Brandt, who gave the morning address, and what Dr. Lal just shared. There's a lot of solutions in this. So what we're going to do now,